Welcome to another episode of Mental Health Mondays, where we talk to guests who are either professionals in the mental health space, advocates for mental health, or those that live with or experience a mental health challenge. And as a reminder, if you are watching this on YouTube, make sure you mash down that subscribe button so that you don't miss any other episodes. And if you're watching this on Facebook or LinkedIn, hopefully you're already following us, but if for some reason you're not, make sure you follow again so you don't miss any episodes. And if you know anybody that can utilize the information that we talk about on Mental Health Mondays, please feel free to share. The whole goal of Mental Health Mondays is really to bring resources to you and listen and hear stories of those that may have gotten into the work that they do, or maybe they're experiencing a mental health challenge, but really just the awareness. So without further ado, I am going to bring on my guest for today, Cassandra. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for letting me be here. I always enjoy it.
Yeah, well, tell the audience a little bit about yourself.
For sure. Well, my name is Cassandra. I currently live in sunny Florida and adore it. I definitely think that sunshine is good for mental health. I know it was good for me. But I've lived all over the place and had several different, really career trajectories. Two of my favorites have included, number one is working with high school and college aged individuals on how to make differences in their stories. As I got to know them, I got very well acquainted with the landscape of mental health in America, especially among the young, but in adults as well. And then now I'm currently focused on writing. I've got several books myself, a couple of online courses, but I also help to coach other people to write their first book. That's a separate part of my life, but no matter what, it all began with wanting to reach people with a message of hope, even in the middle of mental health struggles, and finding something that's a little bit more than you can do it, and a little bit meatier with, okay, and here's how. Like, here's how we go and do that new thing that we're supposed to be doing.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think key piece is that hope piece. I think that's so important. That's amazing.
Yeah.
And what really led you into doing all of this?
I think, this, I'm going to make a statement and I'm going to unpack it. But I think a lot of times when we write a book, we're first trying to save ourselves. Like, we're looking for that message that maybe we needed when we were younger at an earlier phase of our life. And we're wanting to kind of reclaim our story by telling it the way that we've always wanted it to be. I think that was true for me. Is I went through a lot of just maybe dark or negative mindsets as a younger person and wondered where hope was. And there were a couple individuals who showed me how to live a new story and walked alongside of me in a mentorship role. And I wanted to pay that forward. And so that led me towards writing, but it also has pushed me forward to how do we actually find tangible helps so that hope can be paired with action and can be sustainable. So a lot of my work was founded in, I think, probably wanting to like save myself in the beginning, but then also just as I began to work with more and more individuals and mentor and coach and guide them, I realized this is where I want to invest time. Like, I want to help people to rid themselves of feeling like mental health was in the driver's seat of their life, but that wholeness could be the thing that's guiding their decisions.
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, I know I have written for several collaborative books.
Yeah.
And it was one of those. I used to write in journals way back in the day all the time. And then I got to a point that I wasn't writing at all anymore, especially after I lost my middle sister to suicide in 2017. I kind of lost that drive to write. And then when I was asked to be a part of collaborative books, I was like, ooh, like, I don't have to write the whole entire book myself, but I can tell my story in one chapter. And so I ended up actually writing for 4 different collaborative books. And now I'm in the process of writing my own.
Good for you.
And we'll see how that turns out.
It's a gutsy thing. I always say, like, you're almost putting your own emotional, so to speak, like your own blood is in the ink. Like, it just is. And when you dare to tell such a vulnerable story about your own life, whether it's been impacted by trauma or great pain or just overcoming something, man, it's such a risky thing to go, here's my life, it's on a page, and you can do with it whatever you want.
Yeah.
But it's brave and it's vulnerable. And I think when we put our stories out there, especially when we know what the end of the story is, like we know what that resolution, that wholeness was, right? We put those kinds of stories out there, we leave a path for someone else. And that can be incredibly redemptive for our own lives to go like, oh, it was worth the hard work of making it through because now I've left a trail.
Yeah. I think at least when I thought of writing a book, I always thought of those big, like the thesaurus size, right? You're like, oh my gosh, I have to write like 1,000,000 pages.
No, it's actually industry wise, we're actually going to smaller and smaller books right now. The funny thing is, we used to go into libraries and Barnes and Noble and, Books a Million, and love those companies, not knocking on them. But the what looked impressive before was having a thick spine and then having like your name or your title stand out. And so the thicker the spine, the better, because more shelf space. You're like, I am here. But now we're digital, right? And so if we can get the information in shorter chunks and still have that same impact, it's just as important. So there's weird trends, but I think mental health is one of those things that it shouldn't be short or long. It should be just right for the topic, right? And sometimes we can only take little chunks, and that's okay, because it's just about taking one next step. I can't go the whole journey. Like, I just can't, but I can maybe take one step, or I can listen to one podcast, or I can watch one video that helps me go, can I like maybe make it to next week? Or could I maybe reach out like this? Or could I maybe have the courage to go make an important phone call for myself? And sometimes that's the biggest win, instead of like, I read or wrote a 300 or 400 page book.
Yeah, I think that's so important too, is what you just said, is that we can take things in small chunks. And I know oftentimes, like, I have a networking group I'm a part of, and they have a book club. And I'm like, I mean, I have all these books that are behind me. Have I read any of them? Maybe a couple.
Yeah.
But it's good to know and notice that you can do things in small bite-sized chunks. You don't have to just go at whether it's writing a book or reading a book. You can take those small bits of information. And I think that's the cool part, is I have noticed, at least some of my friends, they've written their books in chapters so that you can just flip through it and pick whichever one. You don't necessarily have to start at the beginning. You could start at the end if you chose to, and it all still makes sense. And I think that's really cool what's happening today with authors in general.
We're looking at a lot more asynchronous learning. And, what do I need first? Well, the material that I created, so it sounds impressive, but it's not meant to be. I've written close to 100 books. A lot of them are this big because I only wanted for each person to be able to find help for the thing that they're struggling for. So what do I do if I struggle with thoughts of suicide? What do I do if someone that I love is struggling with dark thoughts? What do I do if a student that I know is struggling with dark thoughts? Those are 3 different books. Now, they might have similar information, but like, you only need parts of the story based off of who you are. And so I love being able to segment that and go, no, you only need this little bit. Let me help you with the exact thing that you're looking for, because you're either struggling, you're either in pain, you're looking for hope, or someone who does. Why wade through hundreds of pages? Like, nobody has time. We just need tangible help.
Yeah, I love that. And that's really amazing that you are doing just the smaller books and being able to focus on a specific audience versus everybody. So that's really cool. I have recently, one of my friends, she said that she's making more flashcards. So it's instead of doing a full book, which she's written a book, but really it feels like flashcards are almost the up and coming thing.
I could see that.
in addition, I love that you said the smaller books, right? It's like
Yeah.
focused on that one demographic versus
Answers
everybody.
one question, just
Yeah,
one,
that's
because
amazing.
we don't need to understand all of the ins and outs of a social issue or a trauma impact. Like, yes, some of us are professionals and we do need to understand those. But for the rest of us commoners, like who just are trying to figure it out, like, I don't say commoners in a derogatory way. Like, for all of us, we're like, I just need help right now. I want to put that in someone's hands because I know what it's like to look for help yourself and not know where to go. Like, it's overwhelming. Number one, just to believe in yourself that you can go find help is huge. But then if you then invest that courage and you can't find it, it's deflating. And then if you are a professional or not a professional, you're just what I call a care worker. Like, if you're just someone who's like, look, I will work alongside of someone in their story and I care for them, I want them to do well, you don't know where to go either. Like, you just need one little prompt to help you get to the next spot. It's a tricky thing to support someone's story when there's a lot of pain inside of it. And I think sometimes we shy away and we're like, I don't know if I should dive in. I want to make it easy for someone to stand beside someone and go, I don't understand all the pain. I don't understand everything you're going through, but I do have enough of a landscape awareness that I can stand here and not feel so uncomfortable. Because I love someone and I'm willing to be in that uncomfortable season with them. We just need a little bit of navigation. I want to give someone that.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I know, I mean, you're like speaking my language because everything that we do, especially inside my nonprofit, is all about that conversation. It's like, where
Yeah.
do we start with a conversation? Because oftentimes that's the place that people don't know how to
Correct.
do. And so I think that's really cool. Also, it makes me think of so the Cliff Note books.
Yeah. Yeah.
Back in the day, you could get the
Like from college, we were like,
yeah.
I just need to figure out what The Great Gatsby was about in 20 minutes because I'm about to go to class. Yeah,
Yes.
I know what you're talking about.
That's like, I mean, mainly for me, that's how I read books most of the time is with the
Yeah,
Cliff Note version. I know that there's an app now even for that they
it will.
basically give you all
It
the Cliff
will.
Notes in every book. But
Just so much information. Like it condensed is okay. Like take the nuggets and roll with it.
yeah, that's awesome.
My whole thing is just like I don't believe that I can completely change someone's life. I think that's really audacious to be like, I can save a life or I can change a life. I just want to be the person that says, I see you, I hear you, I understand that where you're at is hard. I just want to point you to one resource so you can take one next step to get in the direction. I can get you to the end. I would maybe stand with some people towards the end. I love that when I'm invested in a relationship, I can stand with them to the end. But on a larger level, I just want to point towards one next step because everybody's story is unique and they're all going to need different resources. Let's just like not assume the hero, but just support the next step in the story.
I love that.
Yeah.
I mean, the way that you say that, it feels so much easier to
Yeah.
potentially author a book
Oh,
also.
yeah. Oh, yeah. We all, I mean, yeah, for sure. One of the things that I came up against is, again, I was working with a lot of high school age and college age, and I wrote my material for all ages, but yet somehow that was the first spot that I was in. And parents and family members would be like, this is great, but like, I don't know how to have conversations like this. Like, it's hard. Like, we're not trained as parents to like have tough conversations with our 14-year-olds who are dealing with cyber pressure that we never had, right? Like, how do you know? There's no training for that. That just naturally is like, well, you know, you're 35 now. This is the class you take. Like, we don't have those. So I designed an online course so that someone could have self-paced mentorship. Like, I will help you walk through these themes. But I quickly realized I almost needed a mentorship course for the mentors who are actually going to be in person-to-person relationship with people to help them through. And so what I like to walk people through is here's how we're about to go talk about this one concept, just one little thought of victim is not your name tag. Like, what happened to you does not own your identity. That's the only thing I need you to learn, the only thing I need you to understand. But as a care worker, as a parent, as a community leader, as a school guidance counselor, here's how you have that conversation with someone, because we don't have that training, right? And so, but I want to empower people. I did a podcast 2 or 3 weeks ago, and they asked me, well, are you licensed? Like, are you a professional? I said, I am a professional, but I'm not a licensed clinician. And they're like, well, does that put you in risk? Like, why are you offering so much mental health advice? I said, I'm not claiming to be something I'm not. I actually think it's good that I'm not licensed, because I'm trying to advocate for the fact that everyone should be learning on how to have these types of conversations, because we all have people in our life, whether it's us or someone that we know, whether they're on our business team, they're in our schools, they're in our community centers. We all are connected to people who are struggling. It's time that we all help each other out. But to do that, we need to be equipped.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that's, I mean, interesting that you had that question posed to you.
Yeah,
And I oftentimes, because I'm not licensed, I have a degree, but it's not, really
right,
in that space, but I also have lots of certifications, and I
sure.
had to be reminded by my mentor that I have more human conditioning and more training than
Correct.
a good chunk of the professionals. And that was a good reminder to me of, although I'm not licensed, right? I don't have this license that I can go and provide services. I still have the certifications and the
Yeah,
training and the understanding. And I think that's where it really comes from is, have you lived, like the lived
right,
experience, right? I
sure.
think that's almost more valuable than some of the licenses that they do give out.
But
So,
I also love licensed professionals. Like,
yeah.
I think that there is a time, there's a place. I almost consider some of my work more of like, I don't know if the term halfway house is correct, but it's like that bridge between the two, because in my lived experience and from the people that I know, we're not always ready to jump into a therapy session or a counseling office. It takes courage to get there. And I would rather provide that bravery to say, like, I again, I hear you, I see you, I do understand where you're at, because I've been there too, or because I've researched and I've studied, and I can, from a bit of a step back, understand things you may be thinking. Let me help get you to the professional care that you need. But let's start here, as that human to human connection, where we can relate with anyone regardless of maybe the educational background. But if I can get you to someone that you need to talk to, even better.
Yeah.
It's a continuum. It's not a one or one and done.
Right. No, definitely. Yeah. And that, I think that's just even part of the conversation is, who are the professionals that you can talk
Yeah,
to? Because sometimes
absolutely.
people aren't aware. And so being able to be that guide, like you were
Right.
saying, to be able to offer them solutions, and giving them that extra support that they
Mhm.
can do it for
Yeah.
themselves, I think is really important. So that's just amazing that you're having those conversations also.
Yeah. Well, have you ever like have you ever been in a spot in life where you need a job and like you're looking for your next path in life, and then someone will walk up to you and be like, "Oh, well, just go get a job." I know that that's what I need. Thank you very much. And I've like been through all these interviews, but no one's hiring me. Thank you very much. Like, it's frustrating, right? It's like to walk up to someone who's struggling and just be like, "Well, you just need to get into counseling."
Yeah.
Okay. It's not like I just like drive to McDonald's and order fries. Like, this is a whole big thing, and it takes time. And I like to encourage people, like, listen, it's you have to vet a counselor. Like, it's not like I just walked into one office, we clicked, we're good.
Mhm.
I hate to use the term dating or courting, but there's almost this like back and forth of finding the person that's really right for you. And it can be disheartening to get there. It's again, it's like going on job interviews when you don't have a job, but it is worth it to find that professional care and support, because a lot of us, listen, hand raised in the air right here, we got stuff in our lives. I'm like, it takes skilled, careful guidance to uproot some of that. And I think it's worth it to uproot those areas that are just not letting hope grow or, freedom blossom. It's when there's stuff in the root, when there's deep pain, it deserves to be acknowledged and cared for tenderly.
I think that's a great point too, is there are lots of professionals. And so if you don't necessarily click with that very first one, that's okay. And it is important to know that you can, like you said, you can date, you can go
date your therapist.
Right. Not date. Yeah. Don't actually date your therapist. You can use that mentality of, hey, maybe this person is not right for my situation, and that's okay. Right. There are lots of professionals. There's lots of people that are not necessarily like the licensed professionals, but are still professionals that are also able to guide and help. And if you don't click with them, and that's what, at least for me, whenever all my clients, I'm like, hey, let's have a conversation first and see if I'm right for you and your situation. And that's how we should go into all of those conversations is this person right for me, for the situation that I'm going through? Is it something that is going to be short-term or long-term? And if it's not, it's okay to look around. And so, it
doesn't mean that your story is invalidated. Just because you shared a part of it and then someone's like, oh, you realize it's not good, doesn't mean you shouldn't share your story somewhere else. I actually had a counselor tell me, I was in one state and I was moving to another, and so I couldn't continue services with her. And I was like, I have to find a therapist and I don't want to, and this is going to be awful. And she's like, listen, did you know it's completely within your right to call the therapist and talk to them on the phone for 3 to 5 minutes before your appointment? And I was like, no, I thought you're just supposed to pay and show up, and, sucks to be you if, it was a stinky session. She's like, no, you can get the gut check in 3 to 5 minutes. You're going to be okay. That's fine. Ask around, call a couple people, and you'll know if you feel like, oh, it's worth stepping into their office and trying a session or not. I had no clue that was something I was allowed to do. I don't know. I don't know. And so now I do that. And I also kind of created a system for myself to stay a little bit safer, is when I'm stepping into a situation where I'm going into new professional care, any type of professional care, right? Because you feel very vulnerable when you're in those kinds of situations. I have 2 different people that I text. I'm like, I'm about to go into this session later in the day. Just so you know, feel really nervous about it. Don't know what's going to happen. But can I check in with you on the backside? Because I know if I'm super irritated and I'm in that session, I get to go text so-and-so. It's like, I've got this continuum of support around that, instead of just, I'm walking in blind. No one knows I'm here. Whatever happens, it's between me and the counselor. I feel, vulnerable and exposed. And then I go leave either feeling great or feeling like, blah. Yeah. There's a system where I'm creating my check-ins so that I don't feel like it's such a lonely experience.
Wow. I love that. I've never actually, I didn't know that you could also call either. So see, learning something.
I'm like, man, if they don't give me 3 minutes ahead of time, and listen, this is not time for a free session. I'm not trying to steal their services. Yeah. But if they don't give me 3 minutes, I'm probably going to be irritated in the session.
Right. But I like that continuum of people around you too. That is really amazing that you are, openly communicating with others around you also. And you have those trusted people that know that they're that person for you. I think that's
right. But it removes the burden where it's not like they're my counselor, right? Mm-hmm. But they can still support me, and I can still be open about what's going on in my life. But I'm getting appropriate care from professionals. But I'm also being a good friend by talking about what's going on in my life, and sharing about how I'm taking steps to own my story and to own my direction.
I love that. Yeah. I'm like, I love all this conversation. I literally can just talk about this for hours. So I know that, obviously the conversations are really important, whether it be about mental health, whether it be about writing your story or becoming an author, or anybody wanting to even take any of your classes. What are some, so if, what's the question? There's a question in my mind. If somebody wants to tell their story and they're like, wow, this makes so much sense that, like, I don't have to be this thesaurus author. I can write these smaller books that are just to one demographic. What would you say to that person that's like, I just really still don't think that that's something that I would be able to do?
So if you're thinking about writing your story and actually releasing it to the world, there's a couple ways to go about that, right? So number one is, I think we deserve to tell ourselves our story first, whether that's journaling, like selfie videos where we're just like talking it through. I think sometimes we just got to get ourselves in order and go like, what did and didn't happen in my life? And it takes time to figure out what story you want to tell everybody else. Does that make sense? Like, not that the world isn't ready. It just, I know for me, I had to kind of sort my brain and go, what story am I really wanting to tell? Because at the end of the day, people don't want to buy your journal. They want to buy, there's only two reasons why people make a purchasing decision: because it fixes a pain or a problem that they have, or because it brings them joy. Mm-hmm. And so if we are going to tell a story, we need to make sure that we're either providing joy or providing a solution to pain. And so when I think about what do I have to offer, even if it is more memoir-like what part of my life can I use to serve others? How am I bringing them joy, or how am I bringing them a solution to their problem or pain? Mm-hmm. Once you figure that out, you got your story, right? You know what to do. Writing is a very complex, broad topic, but always considering your target audience. Now that you know what pain or problem you're fixing or what joy you're offering, who are you writing it to? Mm-hmm. What are they like? One of the exercises, the word exercise got stuck in my brain. One of the exercises I like to take my authors through is right before they begin to write their book. We kind of know what it's going to be about, the problem that we're solving, the joy that we're bringing. Like, go find 3 pictures that represent people who would read your book, and then put those pictures in your office. What do they look like? Who are you writing to? What's their story? You might know them, you might not. There might be magazine clippings or stock photography, but figure out who you're writing to and make sure that you're always serving them, not just you. Mm-hmm. And it's okay to enjoy the writing process, enjoy that we're getting to talk about ourselves or about the things that we've learned, but it always has to serve the audience, or else people will put the book down because they're like, it's kind of, we if it's not about us, we don't care. Let's be real. And so finding the problem that you're fixing, the pain that you're solving, the joy that you're offering, who you're writing it to, who your target audience is, and just getting good at writing. And writing is rewriting. Anne Lamott has a good book called Bird by Bird. I read it pretty early on. I was in writing school 15 years ago. Great book. Writing is rewriting. Writing is just getting the thoughts out of our head and then refining it and making sure that it actually lands with our target. I take my clients, my author clients, through an entire different line of work when they're ready to start writing their book and to be taken through about a 6-month journey. And sometimes, to tie that into mental health, sometimes that can be completely healing for someone who's going through that. Sometimes it does need to be paired with professional services to make sure that as we're exposing vulnerable areas of our life, that someone has professional support and personal support for that. But writing is great. I think anyone can write if they're willing to rewrite, if they're willing to learn and not be so attached to everything that you think should go in the book, but to get good feedback and to make sure that you're able to provide what others want in the book. I think it's great to share our stories. I think it's a redeeming way to reclaim parts of our life and go, I'm going to talk about the things that are hard, but I'm going to make it through and it's going to be okay. And I'm doing this so that someone else can, again, find that path.
I love that. Yeah, because I mean, I know, well, so a couple things popped in my head. I have heard, like when you write a book, you want to start with the end in mind. So like you said, what is that solution that you're providing, or what is the joy that you're
Right.
providing from the book? And then also, I know at least the first chapter that I wrote, I was in a space where I was in the healing process.
Sure.
And as I started to write, it came out. And so I think that it's important what you
Right.
just said is pairing that with professional help, which I was at the time. And so it is important because it releases a lot of emotions. And then you do have to go back and read what you wrote to see if there's that solution or if you're just telling your story. And I do know, even reading back what I wrote a couple years ago, I'm like, oh, wow. Like there's moments that you're like, oh, that was really good.
Yeah. And it's okay to tell our personal stories, right? Like, I'm totally down with that. It just has to have a purpose. It has to be guiding someone towards it. I think it is beautiful to, have you ever heard the term, the gift of going second?
Mm-mm.
I heard this in a book, and for the life of me, I don't know what book it is, so I feel like I'm stealing someone's IP, and I don't mean to. So whoever you are, please email me one day. But it's called The Gift of Going Second. And basically, it was a teacher, I think it was a teacher in a school, and she knew that like a teen girl was struggling with something pretty deep and kind of dark, and like didn't know how to approach her, but you could kind of just tell that that was happening. But like, man, to get a 14-year-old to open up, like, what is the legal ramifications, and is that safe, and am I treading somewhere that I shouldn't, and is that the parent's job, is it my job, but how do you offer that space, right? And so what the woman did is she just sat down with the girl. She's like, you doing all right? And she's like, no. She's like, that's okay. I wasn't doing too good when I was about 14. Can I tell you one or two things that was going on? And the woman just very carefully, tastefully, and artfully shared just this much of her story so that the girl would be able to know that she understood where she was at. And she just said, like, yeah, I struggled with this. I felt that. Like, it can be really tough when you're young. She filled in the blanks way better than I am. But the girl basically said, well, me too. And in that moment, what the woman did was give the girl the gift of going second in vulnerability. She was second to share. She was second to have to admit things that had happened to her or that she had been engaged in. And so when we create these safe spaces, and that's a broad term, but like when we create these areas where vulnerability is welcomed and stewarded well, then we offer the gift of going second where someone else can say, me too. And so in our writing, there are moments where we need to be able to say, here's my life story. Here's where I've been. Here's what happened in my family. Here's what happened to me. Here's the dark night of the soul that I was in over here. And when we do that, we offer a way through the dark night of the soul. We give the reader the gift of going second.
I love that. Yeah, I mean, just thinking of it in that manner of knowing that somebody may have had a similar experience, but then also, I love how you just said going through. Right. Because oftentimes, especially with mental health, is we tend to shove it down as far as we can and or go around it. And at least what I have learned, the most effective way is through and learning how to go through that. But I love how you said giving them the opportunity to go second, because you don't have to just go in and like talking about professionals, right? Go in and spill everything. Right. You have that opportunity to find this place of safety and vulnerability and be able to share after somebody has shared. And that person doesn't necessarily have to give every single piece of what they've been through. They just have that ability to give parts of it, to create, I say safe spaces too. So yeah absolutely. I love that.
Used a lot of different terms.
right?
Whatever. But just cultivate that environment where it's okay to be human, even if that humanity portion of the day is ugly. Okay. Guys, a couple days ago, I was just struggling and someone made like a positive comment, oh, but you're going to do great things one day kind of a deal. And this, that, and the other. And I was like, yeah, I don't know, like just voice trailing, like just couldn't believe it. And they're like, why? Like, do you not believe that? And I just said, I'm going to share the ugly side of myself. The ugly side is that I need that part of me to be publicly validated. And it hasn't been. So I struggle. But there was like such a release and to be able to say the ugly side of myself right now is that I want and I think that's okay. I was with a good friend who wasn't going to be like, oh, well, you're not like radiant with splendor right now. They're like, okay, cool, but like it'll happen one day, so calm down.
Yeah.
Right? But we all have things that we wouldn't want to put on the red carpet, right? But that doesn't mean that we should have to hide them. It just means we share those in the appropriate spaces.
I love that. That's why I love this, the show that I do, because we can have, I mean, these open, honest conversations, and whoever might be listening, maybe that's just what they need to hear, is that you can have these conversations, and we can also create those spaces for people to be able to open and talk honestly about whatever's going on and share our ugly side. So I love that. So I'm curious, any last thoughts or words that you want to give to the audience?
Sure. I have an exercise for everyone who's like trying to figure out where they're at in their story. I love to share this exercise. It's figure out who your authors are. Ultimately, it's almost like we're writing our own books, right? It's almost like we want the pen in our hand. Sometimes we give away the pen, we give away control to other people because we think that they can write a better story, or maybe if they control my life, we don't actually think that, but we kind of subconsciously think that. Like if I let this relationship go to a certain degree, like they're going to get me to a better spot. Not always. Ultimately, we are in control of our own lives. We have lots of influences, but still, we're the ones that make decisions every day, and we get to decide where we're heading. But sometimes we lose the pen. And I'm all about taking back the pen. And so in order to do that, you have to figure out who your authors are. I define it in 3 categories. There are trustworthy authors, people that champion for a story, people that we can enter into those safe spaces with, family members that root for us, maybe professional services, those individuals who go, I don't want to steal the pen from you. I want to teach you how you can write a good story for yourself and champion for you as you're putting your life in the direction that you want it to go. That's trustworthy authors. Untrustworthy authors are people that you might have thought were trustworthy, but somewhere along the way you realize, you're trying to control my story, or you're trying to bully me into a decision, or you're trying to claim, you're making an identity claim on who I am that does not align with who I am. You're untrustworthy. No, like not okay. And there are dark authors. There are people who are the villain and just should not have access to our lives, but for some reason they did, whether because they just ran onto the stage, like they jumped onto the page and they weren't allowed to be there. We didn't want them there, but they stole something, and that's not okay. Like those villains do exist. And sometimes it takes years of good, licensed, professional support to how to get our story back from them because they were the villain. They stole, right? One of the exercises that I would encourage anyone that's listening to watch is just name your authors. Who was untrustworthy? Who is trustworthy? Who was dark? And it's okay to assign people to a different label, because when we label them, not that we're like, I hate you or burn pile, like that's not the point, but when we label them, then we know how to appropriately handle those relationships. And from there, you can begin putting in boundaries. You can begin reclaiming your story. But the first step is to label who is who.
I love that. That's awesome. So if somebody wants to work with you, how can they do that?
Yeah. My website is changeyournarrative.org. Yes, right there. I personally answer the emails that come through that website. So that's just the easiest way. On there, I have video-based mentorships, so someone can go on at their own pace. But then I also can work with groups, so we can go through the material together.
Awesome. And is it a nonprofit? You have the .org?
It's a for-profit. I work with a lot of nonprofits though, who are looking for good material. I love supporting. I've been so blessed to be able to partner with a couple of human trafficking prevention or rehabilitation programs. Like sometimes you just need good curriculum to walk. How do you reown your story? And I love supporting all types of groups, but somehow that one's my personal favorite at the moment.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. Well, yeah, so there again is her website. If you want to work with Cassandra, I just so appreciate you coming on and sharing all the things that you did, because I think it is very important to be able to tell our story and own our story, but then also have the way to be able to do that. So I think that's really amazing what you're doing.
Thanks so much. I loved being here.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. All right, y'all. That was another amazing episode of Mental Health Mondays, where we talk to guests who are either professionals in the mental health space, advocates of mental health, or those that live with or experience a mental health challenge. And like Cassandra said, is that we all have a story, and sometimes those of us that want to tell our story publicly, there is a way or an avenue to become an author, and you don't necessarily have to write those ginormous books, right? You can be very intentional as to what you're writing, what you're telling, as long as you have that solution in mind and or the joy. What is the end in mind? What is the story that you're going to write? And I just think that that's an amazing way in general to think about writing or telling your story. So if you felt like this was valuable and you know somebody that maybe needs this information, again, make sure you mash down that subscribe button if you are watching on YouTube, or follow us on LinkedIn or Facebook. And as a reminder, if you're not watching this, you can always listen. This is published to 7 other platforms. And really exciting news, which I know I've been talking about for a little while, but we will be shifting platforms this month. It is coming in a couple weeks. We are going to be shifting this podcast over to E360 TV, which goes out to Hulu, Apple TV, so many other streaming services. So we're like, going to become this legit TV show, which is really, really incredible. You'll still have the opportunity to, whether you're listening or you're watching, you'll have both spaces. And just make sure, again, that you follow us. You're listening on whichever platform or watching on whichever platform is best for you. And that way you can share this information. And we're going to add another hour. I haven't figured out which hour yet, but once I know that information within the next week, because I'm going to have to figure that out, I will let you all know. And as a reminder, BCC Evolution is a 501c3 nonprofit. We are still taking donations for our Climb for Mind. The easiest way to donate is to just text Climb for Mind to 44321. We are raising $60,000 for mental health and suicide prevention education. And because Philip and myself will be climbing up a mountain 13 times, equaling 30 miles, going to be the most mentally, physically, emotionally challenge. I was actually telling my sister about it. She's like, that sounds horrible. But it will be the biggest challenge that I have ever done in my lifetime, because I know the importance of mental health and suicide prevention education. And so that is the best way that you can support BCC Evolution, bring all of this programming to you, so that we can support the audiences that we have. And last reminder, I did this last time, but I want to make sure I give back to you also. I know that we're giving all this information every single time we have this show, but you can also go to bccevolution.org. We have 2 free downloads. We have our 7 strategies for mental wellness and our safety and self-care plan. So if you are somebody who struggles with or lives with or experiences a mental health challenge, and or just somebody who needs extra support at any point in time, I would highly recommend going and downloading our safety and self-care plan. It's for you, for those moments that maybe you need that extra support, like we were talking about. You can write down 3 people that are going to be your people. And there's so many other great things on there. So go download it. It's free. It's on our front page. And if you have any challenges or anything, of course, just reach out to us, and there's lots of resources on our page. So again, thank you so much for watching. We will catch you next Monday at 11 a.m. every single Monday. All right. Bye, y'all.